and I can, if everyone would like, because there is no context outside of this for you to find out exactly what happened. So if you can, I can go ahead. I mean, if you'd like, I can go ahead and give you a bit of the history of what really happened, but it is a little grisly.
I mean, I'm down.
I want I want to know
Sure.
why Yaffy had to die. So only respectful that we learned.
I was gonna say in the
Excellent.
puddle, it's like, oh look, there's Yaffy.
Oh gosh.
Like
I'm going.
dissolved, his skull
Oh look, my
staring.
dagger. It's in the water.
Oh god.
I have a very stinky dagger now.
Oh my gosh. So yes, looking back into the past, and again, they have no context for this in the module really for you to learn. But I do like to give you all the grisly details if you want them. So yes, Gustav Durst did indeed have an affair with the nursemaid uh, several hundred years ago, and he did indeed sire a child upon her. Of course, his wife did not take too kindly to this, as any, woman would do, or man if he was put in such a situation, anyone really. But the Elizabeth Durst was not any normal woman. Indeed, no, she was a raving lunatic who started this cult in her mad sort of, well, in her madness, because you have to understand the things that have happened in this land. When the mist came, there was a lot of famine. People were hungry. People were starving to death, actually. Um, and travelers were out on the road trying to find ways to feed themselves and their families and keep people alive. And the Dursts would happily invite them into their home, uh, where they would lock them up and torture them and sacrifice them here on the altar. And that's how it started off, was just I don't even know that they really started with the altar. It was where we have to feed our families. It was them and some of the neighboring, townsfolk and the more well-to-do types. And they were just like, we have to feed our families. We have to survive one way or another. And as things began to calm down after the calamity struck the land and caused that famine, things began to sort of level out. Well, it turned out that the Dursts and their friends had developed a certain taste for their proclivity to this point. So
Yay,
they,
cannibalism.
exactly, yes. So they had become addicted to what they were doing, and they were not obviously more than just cannibals. They were now mass serial killers, and they very much cursed themselves. In the letter, when Strahd said, you've been cursed, they have cursed themselves. And yes, so the night that all of this went down, when Elizabeth Durst locked her children in the attic upstairs, Rose and Thorn, she then went and found the nursemaid, Margaret, and very quickly dispatched her right there and wrapped her body up in those linens and, shoved her up in that trunk where you found her. And then, of course, the most tragic part of all of this, and again, I do apologize for the grisly details, she did indeed take baby Walter down here to the altar and do the same to him, leaving behind only the topmost portion of him. She then took the remaining parts of him, and the rest of the cultists sat around and feasted upon what was left. Uh, and upon doing so, the dark powers of the land were kind of like, oh, so you wish to gain immortality? Well, then we shall give you such, and turned her into the ghast that you all saw earlier. Now, of course, when Gustav Durst returned home and found that, obviously there was blood everywhere, he did not know where his children were, but he knew for certain what had happened to his youngest child. and he was so distraught. Um, and, had seen essentially what had begun forming because, again, these are evil people. They had spent all that time with all their false trinkets and hopes and, stupid rituals. None of them had ever worked to draw any attention to them. But the taking of such an innocent person is what finally drew that attention. So, as that happened, that is how Walter began to form into this flesh mound that you saw here before you, which, yes, is very, very high of something for level 2, but it really brings it home just how despicable the actions were that this poor innocent child became this monstrosity, and he was just lost in this, you know, think of all the anger and everything that had taken place in this area, all of this energy transference of just the people of, being sacrificed at the altar, watching it happen to their friends, all of those things, all of that energy, all of those emotions and feelings just kind of hung out in here. And then they found a place to go to, which was Walter, because Walter's soul was innocent. So they clung to it, and he became what you saw before you. Uh, very, very tragic tale. And then, of course, Rose and Thorn also, were left upstairs. It's not as if their stories were not just as tragic. Well, not quite as tragic, actually, but still equally devastating. Um, so that is the tale of the Durst family.